You gorgeous individuals, it's Kav here, and today I'm going to be filming the most personal video I've ever filmed. October 10th is World Mental Health Day, and I asked you all on my Twitter what you would prefer to see, a Q&A or a video about my story, and a video about my story is what won out. So today I'm here to share with you all my story and what I've been through, and it's going to contain triggers. I will leave them in the description below, so definitely watch at your own discretion. I am making this video so that people know that they're not alone and that they know that they can make it through whatever difficulties they may face, not to trigger anyone. So please be careful when watching it. And yeah, it's gonna be a long video, so I'm just gonna get started. So I guess for me, my anxiety is what really came first, but I didn't know I had anxiety. I've had it my whole life. I've had it since I was a little kid, but I didn't realize that I had it. I thought that how I felt was normal, but I didn't realize that it wasn't something other people went through. And I was always scared of practically everything, honestly, and I don't know if people around me really noticed that. I think it was kind of more summed up to me being shy and an introvert more than actually being scared of things, because a lot of times I would somehow manage to get over that fear, if it makes sense, but like the fear was still there. I don't know how to explain it, because like it was there for pretty much everything. It came when I had to talk to people, when I had to take tests, when I had to do a presentation, when I had to go somewhere alone. Anything like that would just give me really bad anxiety, but I thought that that's just what life was like for everyone. But then when I was in like 4th to 5th grade, I started getting bullied, and it took me a long time to admit that I was bullied. I actually saw a psychiatrist like at the beginning of my 9th grade, and I told her what had happened, and she said that what I had went through was bullying, and that was the first time I called it that, because up until then I just like didn't admit that what had happened to me had happened, because I used the argument that, oh, other people had it worse, you know, because I was never hit physically. What I went through was verbal and emotional, so I would just say, oh well, other people have had it worse, so what I went through doesn't really count. But that's not true. Your experiences still count, no matter how much harder it is for another person. And it wasn't until that psychiatrist told me that what this person had done to me was actually a form of, she called it emotional abuse, I still don't call it that, but it wasn't until she had said that I was able to admit that yeah, I was bullied, and what she did was bullying. You know, it went throughout, like from my 4th grade to 5th grade up through the end of my middle school, because we ended up going to the same middle school. And 5th grade was the first year where things got really bad. I went to a really small school, so I don't know how we managed to have like this hierarchy of popularity, but somehow we did. And in 4th and 5th grade, I was welcomed into what would be the popular girls, because we had everything separated by gender, which is bullshit. But yes, I was like welcomed into them, but the main person would just treat us horribly. And it wasn't just me that went through this. She would do it with all of us. She would treat us honestly like if we didn't do exactly what she said, what we were doing was wrong, and she would just manipulate us and make us behave in certain ways. And so a group of us actually went to our teacher about it, and we told her, and so then we had a discussion with the person, and she basically just blamed it on another person who wasn't there at the time. And she was like, oh, it's all her fault, she did all of this to you guys, I didn't want to do any of it. And like we just took it, but she would just continuously do that to us. The first real memory of anything concrete happening, I remember at my 5th grade graduation. Me and a friend of mine went to the bathroom, and that's when I found out that this other person was calling me fat behind my back. And you know, maybe I was fat, but that's not a bad thing. But when she said that, it like felt like everything just stopped. It was like something was now wrong with me, something I had to fix. Since then, I have had a horrible relationship with eating, and the fact that this one person pretty much caused that. And it wasn't just her, of course, you know, society also ingrains certain beliefs, but really what tipped it off for me, what made that just go horribly for me, was what she said, that she had called me fat as though it was the worst thing I could possibly be. Your weight literally says nothing about who you are as a person, and it literally does not matter how much you weigh. But I didn't know that at the time. I couldn't deal with that, and even though I know that now, I still do not have a good relationship with eating, and I hope that someday I can. So throughout middle school, I kind of started binge eating, and I didn't really notice that I was doing that up until I entered high school, and it's still something that I struggle with to this day, because like controlling my eating is still so hard for me, because I would just get so depressed, and binging was how I would cope with it. And that brings me to the next part of my story, which is my depression. So my middle school was just as small as my elementary school, but it was split up the same way, and middle school was honestly possibly the worst 3 years of my life. It was a horrific experience, and I wouldn't wish what I went through in those 3 years upon anyone, because it was like every day that I got up, it was like torture. It felt like torture to enter that school and to enter that building. It felt like I was entering an actual form of hell. My friends and I, we joked about how much we hated it. We joked about it being a form of hell, but when I woke up and entered that school, it genuinely felt like I was entering what was my worst nightmare. That was how it felt for me, and it was horrific to experience that. It was horrific to not be able to enjoy my days, to not be able to enjoy what I was doing every day. No one should have to feel like that at all. And my parents were aware of this. They knew I didn't like my middle school, and they offered. They said, do you want to check out new schools? Do you want to try to transfer? They tried their best to make it easier, but I couldn't transfer because I was too scared to, and like my anxiety was preventing me from getting out of that situation. And 7th grade was when it got really bad. That was the first time I ever remember having suicidal thoughts, and I was 12 at the time. So it's just painful to think about the fact that at 12 there was a part of me that didn't want to be alive anymore. And what actually saved me was the fact that it was my sister's first year of college, and I didn't want to miss that. And I'm forever thankful for that, because who knows what would have happened. But 7th grade was when I really got depressed. That was when I knew something was wrong with me. I knew that how I was feeling wasn't normal. I knew that I shouldn't have dreaded every single day of my life, that I shouldn't have been scared at every moment of my life. And my second semester of 7th grade was when I had my first panic attack. We did a presentation, we had group presentations in my class, and then our teacher basically told us we all sucked. And grades were something I always considered to be super important, and it wasn't because my parents ever put any sort of pressure on me. It was that I put the pressure on myself. I thought that I had to be perfect. I was always jealous of my sister because I felt like she was perfect. She got the best grades, and of course I know that that's not true now. You know, she's a human just like I am, but as a kid I always thought she was perfect and that I had to be just like her to be worthy. And my parents never even implied that in the slightest way. They genuinely showed us that they loved us both equally, but I just couldn't see that. Something in me just wasn't working, and it just couldn't see that. And so I just put that pressure on myself. And I was already uncomfortable around people. I had already started to develop the trust issues I had because of being bullied and stuff. And so hearing that what I had done was horrible just kind of broke me. I remember I couldn't breathe. I ran out of the classroom as soon as the bell rang, and I just remember feeling like I couldn't breathe, like I couldn't handle it. I didn't know what was happening to me because I had never had a panic attack before, but I just couldn't breathe, and I had no idea what was happening. And a friend of mine noticed that something was wrong with me, so she calmed me down, but I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know what I had just went through. Then, you know, I went about the rest of my day, and I felt horrible, obviously, but 7th grade was horrific because it was when everything really started, and it was when I knew, you know, this isn't right, what I'm going through isn't right. And my school was just filled with drama, and that just ruined my days even more. 7th grade was when my best friend and I became best friends, but he was in the other class, so I ended up with the same person who had bullied me in my class. I don't know why I hung out with her, but I did, and it just again ruined my days because she would be just as manipulative, and we would try to tell our teachers. Like 3 of us actually went and we told our teacher, we were like, what she's doing is horrible, and the advice we got was kill them with kindness, just like ignore what they're doing to you. And she was bullying us, she was making our lives a living hell, and all our teacher could tell us was kill them with kindness. That was all we got in response, nothing more. That actually might have happened in 8th grade. It was like, thanks for your help, I guess. It's like we couldn't even get help from our teachers because we told one in elementary school, then we told one in middle school, but no one was helping us, and she was just continuously manipulating and making our experiences horrible. 7th grade was the second time something like specific happened that I can remember. There was a rumor that spread that I was a lesbian, and it was spread as if it was a bad thing for me to like girls. It happened with like 2 other students, but with me it wasn't that there was a specific girl, it was that I was just a lesbian. And the way people talked about it was as though it was a bad thing, as though like me being a lesbian was the worst thing I could be. That was actually the same year I started questioning my sexuality, so it just made that experience even harder for me. And that's not something I've really talked to anyone about because I just don't like revisiting the fact that it happened, that I thought that it was a bad thing that I liked girls, because it's obviously not. And it breaks my heart that at that time I was scared to admit how I felt. You know, back then I like really loved Ariana Grande. I still do, but she was like my favorite artist of all time. So this guy in my class would be like, oh, do you want to date her? And I would just be like, no. Then I started getting a crush on a girl in my class, and so a group of people asked me who I liked, but I didn't feel comfortable saying I liked her, so I just lied and said I liked this other guy, and they made it into this huge ordeal that ended up like getting the dean of students pulled into, all because I lied and said I liked the guy's hair. And it just seemed so pointless. It was just all this pointless drama that continuously filled our days for literally no reason, but it just made the experience even less enjoyable because I just dreaded going to school and being involved in drama and not being allowed to sit out of it because I couldn't with the class I was in. It was like I had to be involved in it. And then I had this one teacher who was just horrible and just made my days even worse. She like blatantly favored the people who bullied us, and she was the one who told us to kill them with kindness. Like, she just blatantly favored them, and she blatantly disregarded us. She would skip us at times, or she would just forget about us, and it was like, alright then, I guess we're just not here. And it just made us feel horrible. And I say us as though like me and my friends, because we were just like the outcasts, especially in 8th grade. We were like the outcasts of the school group, and it just made me feel so lonely, and I just felt absolutely and utterly alone. And I know I had like my few friends, but it didn't feel like enough. It just felt like I had no one there. I had no one by my side because I felt so alone. I felt absolutely and utterly alone, and I would cry, and I would just cry, you know. I cried myself to sleep so many nights, and it's like I wasn't living anymore. It's like I was just surviving. It didn't feel like I was enjoying my days. It was just like I was going about them, and it was like, okay, I guess this is just what my life is. I guess this is just how it's gonna be, and it's never gonna get better, and I couldn't see it ever getting better. That's what I told my parents, you know, I think I need help. So we started out by trying homeopathic remedies and like kind of herbal things to try to help me out. And you know, my parents, like, we had a DC trip, and my parents were like, you don't have to go if you don't want to, because one of the teachers who was taking us was the one who was horrible, and they were like, you don't have to go if you don't want to. But my principal was going, so my dad talked to her, and he told her what I was going through, and like she was like, okay, and like he asked her to keep an eye on me, and so he said, you know, if you don't want to go, you don't have to. But I toughed it out, and I went, and it wasn't a horrible experience, but it wasn't necessarily good either. That one had both good and bad mixed into it. Outside of that, 8th grade was just horrible, honestly. Then the school year ended, and like my best friend and I weren't going to the same high school, and you know, I had chosen my new high school, and the 2 memories I have of 8th grade are like the DC trip and us all being super stressed about high school apps because we went to a private school. I also go to a private school now. I took the higher maths when I was in middle school, and so I took a test but I didn't get into the higher math for high school, so I retook a math, and then I also took computer applications over my 8th grade summer. because I wanted to get ahead in computers. I didn't want to take that during the year. Those 3 weeks of summer school were 3 of the hardest weeks of my life. My sister was back, she was back like for the summer. I just remember one day I came home and I went outside to do my homework and I just started crying. I was crying and I was hyperventilating while doing it, and my sister found me and she tried to help me through it, but I couldn't handle it, and it happened more than once. That wasn't the only occasion. Those 3 weeks, I spent multiple of those days, like we got a bunch of homework because we were putting in a semester's work into 3 weeks, and so I would just be crying and having panic attacks while doing that homework. And so my sister was like, okay, we need to talk to our parents, we need to tell them that that you need to get professional help, that you need to see someone. She took me and she told my parents because I was too scared to, and they, you know, set up an appointment with a psychiatrist and everything. And so it seemed like I was gonna get help, but then my sister had to go somewhere for a conference and some of my other family came over to visit, and I will never forget that day because that was the first time I ever self-harmed, and I will never forget how it felt. I started crying immediately after, and I told my parents right after, and then we like sped up the process. We got the psychiatrist, but because she was a family friend, she recommended us to a different psychiatrist because she didn't feel that the closeness was appropriate for her to be, you know, the person that's helping me. But then the person she recommended us to couldn't help us, so he recommended us to a therapist who I have been seeing ever since. And I started seeing her during the beginning of 9th grade, so I was 13 or 14 then. You know, it wasn't any better. I thought that going to a new school would be what would fix it for me, and that's why I kept telling myself that I would just finish 8th grade and it would be fine, because I thought the school was the problem, but it wasn't. And that was why going through that summer was so hard for me, because I realized that it wasn't the school that was the problem, it was me. Of course, I wasn't a problem, but again, that's not how I saw it then. Yeah, I started going to therapy at the beginning of 9th grade. I wasn't doing well. I was depressed like all the time. Like if what I was doing in middle school was just surviving, what I was doing in high school was barely surviving. It was just like making it as much as I could through the day. And I started a depression journal. It had kind of started in middle school, but I didn't really use it. But I started a depression journal where I would write when I would get upset, when I got really depressed, or when I got thoughts of like harming myself while at school. I would use that to try to cope, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to make me feel like I was actually getting anywhere. It was just writing everything that was horrible in my life and then rereading it and realizing that I still felt horrible. Like I said, I started to develop trust issues, and those definitely hit in 9th grade because I had to make a new group of friends, but I didn't feel comfortable talking to people because of what had happened to me, because the person who had bullied me was someone who I thought was my best friend. I thought she was my best friend when she kind of welcomed me into that group. Once I realized that what she had done was bullying, I just didn't want to trust people anymore. I didn't want to let them in. Like I said, my best friend and I went to different schools, so we didn't talk as much. You know, we're still in contact and he's still my best friend, but since we were in different schools, we didn't see each other. So I needed a group to surround myself with, and there was someone else from my middle school who came with me, so I just kind of hung out with who she hung out with. But like, I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with anything. I was just going about every day and hoping that I would, you know, still be there the next. That's extremely sad to think about. In the second semester of 9th grade, things just got really hard because I just realized I hated my school. I didn't feel comfortable there. I didn't feel like I belonged there. It was then that I realized that I wasn't a girl, that I was non-binary, and I was going to an all-girls school, and just I had to wear a skirt every day, and that definitely played a part in how bad I felt. And you know, my parents, again, they offered to send me to a new school. I actually went and visited another school because, you know, my parents just wanted to do what was best for me. They tried, and I was like, can I just leave school, can I do online schooling? So we talked to my therapist about it, but she didn't really like the idea. So we tried to look for new schools, but I just didn't feel comfortable with them. And at that point, I thought things might get better because I was starting to talk to people who I admired at my school, but then it just plummeted, and that was when I started self-harming again. And I don't really want to go into detail about that, but I did it from my second semester of 9th grade till when I attempted. I, finally opened up to someone at my school who I admired. They tried to be there for me, they were really helpful throughout the end of 9th grade, and they were very open and willing to have honest conversations with me and talk about their story, and that kind of helped me open up too, because I would ask them, why are you so open? And they would tell me that, they wanted to help someone, and I was like, well, I kind of want to do that. They were instrumental in helping me through my experiences. And so 9th grade summer, I went to Boston and India. Then I think they weren't the best trips, not because of the people. I loved being able to spend time with my family, but just because I was in such a bad place. I remember in India, that change, I guess, so quickly just really sent me to a bad place. I had quite a few panic attacks while I was there, because India is a relatively crowded place, and one of the forms of anxiety I have is social anxiety. So it was just really hard for me to deal with. And I love India, I love being Indian, I love all of that, but at that time it was just too hard for me to deal with. But I went through that, and then I got back home, and then at the beginning of my sophomore year, I thought I could do it. I thought I could go back to that school, and I thought that I could just make the best of it. But I got back there, and what I had been through freshman year, how I had felt freshman year, just came crashing back down on me. And I had already started seeing my psychiatrist. By then, I started seeing him back in the second semester of 9th grade, because we realized how bad my depression and stuff had gotten. And he was the same psychiatrist I was originally referred to. He put me on medication. After a while, we did a bunch of blood tests to see if of my levels were up, and then I started vitamins. But then finally it was like, okay, I think it's time to start medication. And so he kind of eased me into medication, and it's been really helpful. Everyone has different things that help them, but medication has been extremely helpful for me. I've definitely seen a change in how I felt since, getting to the point where I am now, and I think part of that does have to do with the medication. But we started on a really low dosage because of course he didn't want to put me on heavy drugs immediately, and so it wasn't helping at first because the dosage was so low, I guess. Like I said, I was already on medication, and I guess during my 9th grade summer also, we weren't very open about my experiences. And it's not like my parents didn't want me to be open. I guess to an extent I wasn't ready either. I got back to school, and just everything that I had felt freshman year came crashing down. And I had had suicidal thoughts freshman year, but I had always managed to get through the next day. And that just didn't happen in sophomore year. It came, and it came too fast, and it just all became too much. And it wasn't like one specific thing tipped me over. Everything was just too much, and I just couldn't do it anymore, and I attempted suicide. And my therapist found out, and she told my parents, and I felt so betrayed when she told them. I know now that she had to, but at that moment I was like, I trusted you and you betrayed me. And I remember seeing my dad's face when he found out, and I think that was the first time I ever experienced heartbreak, because I just realized that if something had actually happened to me, that I would have actually been missed, and that I wasn't alone, that I had people who cared about me and who loved me. And I think that's when things really started to change for me, because I just realized that, I deserved to live, and I deserved to be happy. I was put in an intensive outpatient care after that, and that was definitely one of the most helpful things I went through. It was a 2-month program, and I went there every day after school for 3 hours or 4 hours or something, and it was by far the most helpful thing for me, because I was, first of all, not alone. There was a group therapy setting for me, so I was finally starting to interact with people, and I was finally starting to make friendships, which I hadn't been able to do until that point. And then the psychiatrist there, she pushed up my medication further, which definitely played a part in helping me. and you know, we did some exercises. I had a therapist too, and we did some exercises, and there were these behavior specialists who helped us, and the behavior specialists were, I think, what really got me, and the people there definitely were what really got me to where I am now, because they would share their stories and I would start to feel like I wasn't alone, and they would listen to me, they would be there for me, they would offer me advice that didn't feel crappy. And one of them, he actually told me his story, and you know, now he was a specialist there, and he told me his story, he told me what he had been through, and I saw a living person who had been through something like what I had been through and made it. Then I realized that I could do it too. That's when things changed for me. That's when it just all started slowly getting better, and it didn't get better immediately. You know, I had been trying since freshman year to make things better. Freshman year was when I went vegan, so I adjusted my diet to see if that would help my eating, and I started working out because my therapist wanted me to for the release of endorphins, and that's supposed to help, and it has helped me, you know. And we started medication, but none of those really helped until my sophomore year. You know, I think freshman year I was working out for the wrong reasons. I was working out because I wanted to lose weight, because I wanted to be prettier, because I wanted to, you know, be what my ideal version of beauty was. But sophomore year I started working out to be healthier and to be stronger, and I learned how to change my mindset and how to adjust my thoughts, and it was a really difficult experience. Again, it didn't happen overnight. It was extremely hard to get to that point, but I finally started finding the joy in things again. Freshman year I barely read anything. I just binge watched Netflix, and of course that's fine, but I wasn't enjoying that. I was just doing it because I was so depressed that I was way too tired to do anything. Like, I wasn't physically tired, I was depressed tired, which is completely different. It was just everything I did was energy draining. Just going to school, that was all I could do because that took all the energy out of me. But then finally, I think, you know, I started my YouTube channel towards the end of my second semester because I read Lady Midnight, and that definitely helped. It definitely kind of sparked my interest in reading again, but I still wasn't fully enjoying it. But then sophomore year I started putting the effort into it, and you know, the people at intensive outpatient therapy thing, you know, they were always willing to talk about my YouTube channel. They were willing to help me with it, to make it something I was proud of. And I started finding the joy in that again. I started finding the joy in YouTube because I had had a different YouTube channel before my book one, but I stopped that one because my depression got so bad. But now I started to find the joy in it again. I started to live. Each day wasn't surviving anymore, it was living. And like I said, it took a long time. You know, like, my relationship with eating is not perfect today. I still have difficulties with food, and when people tell me they enjoy eating, I still don't really understand that, because to me eating is something I still have to be aware of and something I have to try to make sure I'm doing healthily, because otherwise I'll just go down a dark path. And you know, working out is still something that gets hard for me sometimes because I have to remind myself why I'm doing it, because there are times I'll look at myself in the mirror and I'll be like, I don't like what I see, but then I'll have to remind myself that it's okay. You know, it's okay to look how I look. It's okay to like how I look but still want to improve myself. It's okay to like who I am. And I didn't like who I was for the longest time. And not just physically but personality wise, because my depression just made me harsh and mean. And you know, I snapped at people. I wasn't a very pleasant person to be around, and I didn't like that. By going through that treatment, I managed to change that. I managed to make myself someone I was proud of, someone I was proud to be, someone I enjoyed being. And it was hard because I used the tactic of faking it till I made it, and it's hard to tell people you love yourself when you really don't. But at some point you realize that it's no longer a lie. At some point you realize that when you're saying that, you truly believe it. When I got to that point, it felt amazing. It felt amazing to know that I truly liked myself. And like I said, going up on meds was really helpful. It really improved my depression, although my anxiety definitely took a longer time because sophomore year I had some really bad panic attacks. I had one in the first semester that I ended up being taken out of class in a wheelchair, and I ended up leaving school for the day, and that was like the worst panic attack I've ever had because it was horrible. So my anxiety took a longer time for me to get under control, and it's still not totally under control. I still feel anxious all the time, but I've definitely come a long way from where I've started, and each day I try to push myself just a little bit further to where I'm uncomfortable, but to not where I feel so scared. And you know, I've started being really open about my story. I bet pretty much everyone at school knows I have depression and anxiety and have dealt with an eating disorder. And my depression and anxiety diagnoses are I have major depressive disorder. It used to be severe, currently it's moderate. And I have generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, and we haven't ruled out panic disorder yet, according to my psychiatrist, but we haven't ruled it in either. So it's not a diagnosis, but it's not a diagnosis. And like I said, I've dealt with a binge eating disorder. So, you know, none of those are gone. And I don't know that any of them will ever be truly gone because there's no cure, but there are treatment forms and there are coping strategies. And I'm finally at the point where I know how to cope. I know how to deal. Like, I'm not happy all the time. I'm not perpetually happy and perpetually enjoying everything, but I'm finally at the point where it's just, I know how to be happy and I know how to be sad. I know it's okay to be sad sometimes, and I know it's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel those emotions, and it's okay to let them in and then get through them and get over them. And I know how to feel again, because for a lot of my depression experience, you know, there was a point where it was just sadness, but there was also a point where it was just numbness, where I just stopped feeling. And I don't know which one was harder, but they were both horrific to experience. Like, the sadness it felt endless. The sadness just felt endless, and my therapist always refers to them as depression glasses, where you see the world in a different way. You see everything as sad. And the numbness, it was scary because it felt like I could do something and I wouldn't care, you know, like that. Like, it was during the points where I was numb that I would self-harm, because at that point I wouldn't be feeling anything, and I felt like self-harm was the way to feel something, which is a horrible mindset and not at all correct, even in the slightest. But I am proud to say that since my attempt right before my 50th birthday, actually it was like a week or two before, I haven't ever self-harmed since, and that's been a year now because I'm 16 now. I'm proud to say that now when I have panic attacks, I can sometimes stop them myself. I know that I can leave class. I know that I can do what I need to do to take care of myself. And I know that it's okay to binge watch Netflix sometimes when I'm not feeling up to it. I know that it's okay to feel what I feel and to have to cope with how I have to cope. I have found the joy in YouTube and in reading and in doing the things I used to love again, and I found the joy in being around people. I'm able to trust people, I'm able to open up to people, I'm able to love people and allow myself to be loved now. And it's been a really tough journey, not just for me but for the people around me, because my parents have been so supportive, but of course it's never easy to watch your child go through something like this. But my parents have been so supportive, and so has my sister, and I've been so fortunate to have that. And you know, I still see my therapist and my psychiatrist, but I just cut back on how often I see them. It's so great to see how far I've come, and I'm so lucky to have such a good support system, because I think that's one of the biggest things that has helped me, especially along with the intensive outpatient care, because that was where things changed. Like, I've talked to my parents too, and my mom has said it's helped her too, because she got to see parents who were dealing with kids who were experiencing similar difficulties. What I'm going through isn't over. I'm not recovered. I'm not perfect. Like I said, I'm not happy all the time. I'm not free from panic attacks. I'm not always excited to eat. But I know how to deal with that stuff now, and I know that it's okay that I have to deal with it. I know that it's okay that there's a chemical imbalance in my brain, and that I dealt with shitty shit at the beginning of my life, you know. I say beginning, but like, I mean the beginning of my adolescence. And I know that it's okay that I went through that, and that my experiences are valid, even though they may not have been as difficult as someone else's. They still happened, and they still have validity to them. and I know that I'm not alone. And what I hope for from this video is that you know that too, because whoever you are, even if you are neurotypical, you're probably experiencing some sort of difficulty, whether it's at work or with a relationship, or you know, something with society or something like that, or body image issues or whatever it is. But you're not alone. Everyone faces these difficulties. No one's life is perfect, and we exist in a society where it feels like that sometimes, because we just get to see, you know, the happy pictures on people's Instagrams and stuff, and that's not what life is like. You know, I once found a quote that said that what you're looking at on Instagram is the highlight reels of somebody's life, but what you know about yourself is the behind the scenes. And so you can't compare the two, and as long as you compare yourself to someone else's life, you will never be able to live the life that you deserve. And that's something I have been guilty of so many times, and sometimes I still do that to myself, but then I remind myself, you know, you don't know their story, you don't know what they've been through, you only know the full extent of your own story. So you can't compare what you've been through to what someone else has been through, because they are all valid experiences and they are all real, and no one's life is perfect, no one's life is happy all the time, and that's okay. You don't have to be happy all the time, you just have to be happy with the way your life is. And I'm still dealing with that because I don't like my school days, but I'm finding a way to like them. I'm finding a way to fight for the things I find important at my school, and I look forward to YouTube every day. I look forward to being able to read a new book every day, and I look forward to interacting with you all on Twitter after the end of school. So you just have to find ways to make the days more enjoyable, even when you're going through a situation that's sucky. And you have to support yourself with people who are there for you, because my family is not my family because we're related by blood, but they're my family because they support me and they care about me and they love me, and I love them too. And I'm lucky to have that. Not everyone has that, but you will find your own family even if they're not related to you by blood. You will find your support system, because the book community is my second family. And you know, my close friends, my best friend, he's my brother. He's not just my best friend, he's my brother. And my other best friend, she is my sister. She's my partner in crime, and you will find those people too. I never thought I would find people that I felt so close to. Especially I didn't think I would find them on the internet, but I did, and you will too. You're not going to be alone forever, and you're not alone right now either, because I'm here and I'm talking to you and I care about you. I truly do, and everyone else who's watching this video cares about you and wants you to be okay and wants you to make it through whatever you're going through, and you will, because it does get better. And you may not believe that. I didn't believe that for the longest time. I was like, no, my life is always going to be like this, but it's not. A year later I'm sitting here and it's not like that at all anymore. And it won't be like that for you either forever. And if you are going through something, please ask for help. You are not a bad person for asking for help. You are a good person for asking for help. You are taking action, and you deserve that. You deserve to be happy, and you deserve to live the best life you possibly can. I hope that you will take what I've said in this video to heart, and that it helps someone in some way. Thank you all so much for sitting here and listening to my story. And if you want to share yours, I am open, whether you want to share it in the comments down below, whether you want to DM me on Twitter or Instagram. I will be here and I will listen to you, because I care about you and I care about what you're going through. Thank you. Thank you for sitting here. I don't even know how long this video is, but thank you for sitting here throughout it. Thank you for being you, for being the best person that you can be, because that's all you can do. That's all I have for this video. Usually my channel isn't like this. Usually it's a lot more upbeat and I discuss books if you're new here, but I thought that this was an important video to make, and it was the best day I could choose to make it. And I hope that my story resonates with someone, because if this story helps at least one person out there, then I will have done all that I can, and that's what I hope for. So thank you, and I will see you next week with a brand new video. Goodbye.